Landry Locker, the locker room here on YouTube. Cody Stoots with you as well. Sign or decline. Talking a little bit about the tight end position, Landry. The tight ends on a Tuesday, a little tight end Tuesday conversation. This is a loaded conversation because I heavily feel one way about this, but there's certainly different avenues that the team can take. And really, the conversation starts with Dalton Schultz is set to be a free agent. Does the team bring back Dalton Schultz? And that kind of solves most of the tight end conversation if he's back in the fold. But it's not a for sure thing that Dalton Schultz is coming back.
Here's the thing, like, do you feel like the tight end position should be upgraded? And a lot of times, if you feel that way, it doesn't matter if the market doesn't allow you to upgrade it significantly. So if you look at the tight end free agent market, it's not great at all. Last year, it was very, very average. The draft was stacked. And is the draft this year stacked? Not really. There's one guy that is looked at as like a 5-star type of guy, and then there's a couple of intriguing prospects. So you're kind of in a weird spot right now when it comes to the tight end. Like, if you think they could do better than Dalton Schultz, well, tell me how. And I'm sure that's the discussion we're going to have. But I think that Dalton, at this point, I would think bring him back. I do wonder, though, is there going to be some team, because the tight end market is what it is right now, is Dalton Schultz last year, where the market kind of spoke to him and it made him affordable to the Texans, is perhaps it going to work in a different manner in which Dalton Schultz, all of a sudden, his value, he becomes overvalued? Because I think last year he was undervalued. Does he become overvalued now? And do the Texans decide that we got to figure something out here?
If there were just maybe a few less question marks and a few less areas that you had to feel like you invest some money in it, then it's easy. It's a no-brainer, even if it's an overpay for Dalton Schultz. I still feel like he is the best 2024 option for the Houston Texans because all the top tight ends are locked into their teams and aren't going anywhere. You can't get Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, and I don't believe you're going to have the shot or the opportunity at Brock Bowers. We can talk about the rookies here in a minute, but I don't know that I'd even let Dalton Schultz get to free agency. I'd think about the franchise tag if I had to, just so I could continue to negotiate with him, or I would try to get a deal done if I was the Texans with him ahead of true free agency, so I don't end up in a bidding war where all of a sudden he goes from maybe slightly overpaid to vastly overpaid because some other team got in there and jacked the price up and dumped it on me like it was a Storage Wars episode, you know?
Here's the thing about Dalton, and this is from like knowing people who know him and knowing him as someone that I've talked to a couple times on the show. Like, I don't think Dalton is dying to, get like he wants to be paid, but I don't think he's dying to, like, let's say like New England or something like that offers him more money. I don't think he's dying to move up there because Dalton this year with the Texans, his layout was interesting because his wife actually stayed in Dallas initially and he stayed in Houston. And like, so his whole thing was like, he's a guy he's a laid back dude. He's played at Stanford. He's played for the Cowboys. He's played for here. I think Dalton wants to be here. So that's not the best negotiating power or anything like that, but I think he wants to be here. And I think CJ wants him here. I think that the team likes him here. And I think that kind of lowers his negotiating powers. Like, I don't think Dalton is like going to be dirty and try to like figure out. And I don't mean dirty in like a bad way. Players do what players want to do, but right. I think Dalton wants to be a Texan. And I think that his situation is laid out to where he likes being, whether it's up 45, whether it's down 45, that's what he likes to do. And I don't necessarily think that prevents you from perhaps drafting a tight end or whatever, but I think Dalton wants to be here, and I think they want him to be here as well. So it kind of makes – I don't want to say it's awkward because he's happy. He's going to be rich. He's going to figure it out. all he needs to do is play video games and hang out with his wife and all that. So I don't think Dalton's like some high maintenance guy. So I think it's actually kind of a easier negotiation than it should probably be. And I think they both know that.
Well, he has multiple priorities in his next playing spot. It's not just one priority, which is make as much money as possible. And not every free agent operates that way. A lot of guys are just go to the highest bidder and call it a day. That's not Dalton Schultz. And I just think back, you talk about him wanting to be here. I think back to the way he talked about Bobby Slowick in training camp. And he made the comment, man, if Bobby Slowick had been my coach my first years in the NFL.
Show. That was on In the Loop, Sports Radio 610.
Yeah, I would be deeper in my NFL career, my understanding and knowledge of football if he had been that guy. And then they went out there and had a productive season, and that's sort of the front end of the conversation. And then you go to the back end of the season, after the season is over, and you hear CJ Stroud talk about Dalton Schultz, and it feels like he did some things that are not.
And you hear Schultz talk about Stroud too.
Yeah, it feels like they're in sync. Schultz does some things that not every tight end is capable of doing because he picked up on, or he knew, or he learned a certain way. I mean, Stroud talked about it on the Pivot podcast. He's like, yeah, Dalton actually carried a route a little bit, deeper than the play said, and it opened up something for Tank Dell. Dalton did this. Dalton couldn't even hear what I needed him to do in Cincinnati, but he ran the exact route that I needed him to run. And it's like, do I really want to take the chance of having that relationship show up with a brand new tight end in 2024? And look, Schultz is not some sort of 6-7 year answer at the tight end position, but your primary interest in this free agency is to make sure that 2024 is better than 2023. And I don't know that there's a non-Dalton Schultz option that gets you better in 2024.
Yeah, I just think it's a perfect marriage. Like, I just think they both want each other. And I don't think that there's like a huge upgrade out there. Like you talk about the free agent market, you talk about Hunter Henry, you talk about Fant. Noah Fant. Like maybe you think that you could kick the tires on Noah Fant and it's some sort of like reclamation project, like what we saw with Eric Ebron with the Colts, where, kind of didn't go according to plan. And then you go there. But I just think the chemistry's there. I don't think the price is that high. And I also think you can find complementary guys and stuff, and you can find multiple tight ends. So it doesn't stop you from pursuing other options. And the other thing is, like, if you're talking about, we don't want Dalton Schultz, and then you're going to try to upgrade in the draft, you're kind of at the mercy of a lot of variables. Like you're sitting there in the area where you're not going to be able to take Brock Bowers. Maybe you cross your fingers and you get Jatavian Sanders. I actually think Sanders and Schultz might actually work well together, like as far as like a mold and and then you factor in Brevin Jordan. I think you can figure that type of thing out, but it just seems like a perfect marriage. He wants to be here. He's not high maintenance. He's not trying to just go play anywhere. And I mean, he was already making a home in Houston while his wife was out there in Dallas. So I think Dalton Schultz makes a lot of sense. Spoiler alert, I think signing Dalton Schultz makes sense. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a culture guy. I think him and CJ have the appropriate amount of chemistry, and I think stuff just shapes up. He doesn't handcuff you from doing other things either. Right. That's the other thing about it. Like if we were talking about like paying someone big
5-year deal, a defensive tackle or something,
it doesn't prevent you. Like even if I don't even think he would prevent you from drafting Brock Bowers. Like I mean, he doesn't. The tight end position is such to where it. And his weaknesses, let's be honest, like as far as the blocking and stuff, they're such. I don't think I don't think this decision handcuffs you at all.
Look, the blocking was not as good as it needed to be, but the offensive line wasn't as good as it needed to be, and that's why he was having to block a lot. So if the offensive line can improve, you don't use Dalton Schultz blocking as much. And then when we talk about the tight end spot, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, somebody with Dalton Schultz that you've either invested in maybe free agency or the draft, I'm certainly in favor of that. If that tight end room is Schultz and a rookie and Brevin Jordan, like that's a tight end room I can get pretty excited about from a 2024 production standpoint. I know who your favorite potential Schultz and this player tight end room situation is. It's your buddy that you shared some State Fair food with.
Ja'Tavion Sanders. Yeah, I think Ja'Tavion Sanders in the second round is an intriguing option. I think this was his freshman year. This was after I think Texas beat OU by 50 or something. That was a nice one. And just to let you know how this kid is raised. By the way, I'm rocking the Brian Robinson jersey. Shout out to Brian Robinson, my guy, my favorite Longhorn of all time. Ja'Tavion Sanders' mom was watching us take this picture because I was like, "Oh, hey, let's take a pic, bro." I really just wanted to see how tall he was, and I'm 6'5.5". Look at that, like that's a tall dude right there.
Yeah,
kind of leaning down. But his mom said, "Take the corn dog out of your mouth next time you take a picture with someone." Like she was on his ass. So he's been raised nice. I like Ja'Tavion though.
Yeah,
I like Ja'Tavion. Like even if he falls down to you in the second round, I don't think he'll be there in the third. There's no way, right?
I would be very shocked.
If they pass on him in the third, that would be almost like foolishness, right?
If the NFL allows him to get to the
he's
third
Dalton
round.
Kincaid. Like he's Dalton Kincaid, but might block a little bit better. It might be a little bit tougher, and he might actually be more athletic.
But
Kincaid went in the first round last year. He was hurt last year.
Sanders is tough as nails, man. I mean, people talk about the injury conversation. The dude played in every game. And
every time. Came back in, left,
yes,
came back in, came back in, came back in, came back in.
It very much feels to me like it's Brock Bowers, the Georgia tight end, at the top. Then there's Ja'Tavion Sanders, who we just talked about, as the second tight end. And then there's sort of a gap, and it's really everybody else. And I feel like everybody else is sort of your likely addition. Because I really don't believe he's going to be on the board when the Texans select in the second round.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I don't know. I mean, if happens,
Caserio works some magic.
Even if you sign Schultz though, and you bring him in, you're good.
Yep. So I mean, if you told me it's Dalton Schultz and Ja'Tavion Sanders and Brevin Jordan, I will sign up for that today. That's for the tight end spot.
That's athletic, man.
And that gives Bobby Slowick and the rest of that offense so many different chess pieces to play around with. Nasty. And Landry, if you appropriately address the tight end spot, it takes some of that pressure off of that third wide receiver that we have talked about so much as well. So
and I think it also, like, let's say you sign Schultz to a 3-year deal or whatever it is. I think Sanders can be your replacement for Brevin Jordan as his rookie contract expires. So he's there. And then I think Sanders could play his way into being your long-term tight end.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at like the tight end position, it's almost like a 3-layered type of thing. But it all starts with Dalton Schultz.
Yeah.
I would sign him.
The verdict is very much in favor for both of us to bring back Dalton Schultz, get him in there, and then upgrade the other spots in the tight end room.
He wants to be here.
Yep.
He wants to be here.
Yep. He speaks glowingly about the organization. His teammates have spoke glowingly about him. Make it happen. Get Dalton Schultz back in a Texans uniform and get him signed for sign or decline on a little tight end Tuesday. Good conversation here on tight end Tuesday. Man, you got me excited about the idea of Schultz and Ja'Tavion Sanders together.
Serious. And Brevin Jordan, man.
And Brevin Jordan.
You imagine that 3 tight end set?
That's probably the most athletic tight end group in football. I got to imagine most teams don't have that level of athleticism spread throughout 3 tight ends.
Not at all.
They usually got a slow prodding guy at some point,
Yeah, it's intense, man. I'm down with it.
All right, thumbs up on Dalton Schultz. Get him back, bring him back. Heck, don't even let him hit free agency. Get that deal done before it gets started on the 11th. That's when the tampering happens. That's when agreements start going down. And all the way up to the 11th.
Tampering's going on right now.
Yeah, true. That's when the legal tampering goes on. Excuse me. Let me get my phrasing right. All the way up to the 11th, we have a free agent of the day each and every day for you here on the Locker Room here on YouTube, on my channel, Cody Stoots here on YouTube. And, of course, catch Landry each and every day on Sports Radio 610, where you hear interviews with Dalton Schultz that we then reference many months later as a piece for why Dalton Schultz should be back. You catch him on In the Loop. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Of course, Houston football, where I do all my writing. We got plenty of Texans coverage for you. Free agent of the day coming your way again tomorrow.